If I had a nickel for every time a highly anticipated anime series aired in 2023 with a feature-length first episode, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. The average runtime for a standard anime episode made for television is around 23 to 24 minutes. We kind of take it as a given, but have you ever wondered why it's that long in the first place? To put it simply, the reason why this is the case is because of advertisements filling out the remaining 6 or so minutes within a 30-minute time slot. It's been this way since network television was invented. The interesting thing about Japanese television is that it operates in a similar way to Western television, in that comedies and sitcoms are typically around 22 minutes in length, whereas dramas are around 44 minutes in length. These are also known as double-length episodes, which, as the name implies, is double the length of a standard episode. The only difference is that in Japanese TV, anime is usually given the standard length runtime regardless of genre, and live-action shows are typically double length in nature. However, there have been some occasions where anime episodes have been given the double-length treatment, with the earliest example I can think of being Great Teacher Onizuka's first episode all the way back in 1999. Double-length episodes in anime usually serve as either the series premiere or the series finale, although you do have exceptions to the rule. For this video, however, we're just going to be focusing on how they function as a series premiere. One advantage that comes with having a double-length premiere is that it gives the staff more time to establish a solid foundation for their series going forward. If you're adapting from an existing source material, you can cover more ground and tailor the adaptation to fit your desired series structure. We don't usually get a reason why some anime have double-length premieres and not others. I mean, it does kind of make sense for Demon Slayer seasons 2 and 3 to have double-length premieres just because of how popular they are in Japan, but if that really is the case, shouldn't series that are just as popular be entitled to have one as well? My guess is that some anime are just better suited to the format than others. After all, one major issue that can potentially hinder your enjoyment of a double-length episode is grinding the episode's pacing down to a halt, or by dragging out scenes long past their usefulness. So there are naturally pros and cons to having a double-length premiere, and even though they have become more commonplace, especially in the last few years, we still don't see them all that often, and in the cases where they push the format to brand new places, that is kind of the extent of it. Or so we thought until 2023, when 2 new anime would go even further beyond and have their inaugural episodes surpass into feature-length territory. Those 2 anime are Oshi no Ko and Frieren Beyond Journey's End. To understand why this is a big deal, let me break it down for you. Oshi no Ko's premiere sits at around 82 minutes, whilst Frieren's premiere clocks in at a whopping 2 hours. Well, not quite, but I'll explain that later. Whenever it's announced that an anime will have a double-length episode of any kind, I've always gotten the impression that it's meant to be treated like an event, and these 2 series certainly got that treatment. Oshi no Ko's premiere was shown in select theaters across Japan a month ahead of its TV broadcast on Tokyo MX, and Frieren was the first anime series to air on Nippon TV's Kinyo Roadshow, a programming block that is usually reserved for feature films. This would then serve as the debut for the network's new Friday night anime programming block. I've seen some claims over the years that all double-length premieres are a result of poor planning and or a lazy production, but in the case where an entirely new programming block is created just for this anime, I'd like to believe that there had to be some competence involved in order for something of this scale to happen. But what is it about these 2 series that warranted a feature-length premiere? And ultimately, is that length justified? Well, let's find out. Despite the differences in genre and tone, both Oshi no Ko and Frieren do share some common ground. Both are based on award-winning manga series with pretty devoted fan followings. Daisuke Hiramaki and Keiichiro Saito both previously worked as key animators before sitting in the director's chair for their respective series. And hell, both of them have a Yoasobi song for the OP.
Coincidence? I think not!
However, the most important thing that they have in common is how they use their extended runtime to win over potential new fans and to get them to continue watching the rest of the series. They do that in 2 ways, the first of which being The first episode should not only introduce the audience to the setting and characters, but also should encapsulate what the show is ultimately about, everything from its themes, tone, mood, etc. Basically, it's treating the episode like a mission statement for the rest of the series to follow, and a feature-length episode hopefully allows more time to show that. Let's look at Oshinoko's approach. Firstly, it has an absurd premise. Goro Amemiya, a gynecologist doctor at a rural hospital, is tasked to take care of 16-year-old Ai Hoshino, a rising star in Japan's idol industry who is pregnant with twins. As a massive fan of her career, he obliges a duty of care to her, but on the day of her delivery, Goro is murdered by a stalker of Ai. However, Goro soon realizes that he has been reincarnated as one of Ai's children, her son Aquamarine, with all of his prior memories before his murder still remaining intact. What's stranger about this is that his twin sister, Ruby, also happens to bear the memories of Serena, who was a terminally ill patient at the hospital Goro used to work at, and was also a massive fan of Ai's career. Okay, that is a lot to take in, and we aren't even halfway through the episode yet. But the best part about this premise is that the anime takes it completely seriously. The way they make sense of it is by using it as a means to depict the depressing ramifications of being an entertainer in the modern age. The act of deceiving others and being dishonest with your feelings in order to further your own career prospects, how engaging with hateful messages on social media can negatively impact one's mental health, and revealing the darker side of stan culture, and how that can dangerously escalate to levels of unhealthy obsession. Hypothetically, they could have assigned each topic to an individual episode, but the fact that they're all on display here in one episode gives the impression of a fully rounded world right from the start, which can also be used as a springboard to further explore the damages seen later in the series that were caused by this episode's lingering after effects. Speaking of which, while this episode's main objective is attempting to expose the grim reality of the entertainment industry, ultimately at the heart of this episode is Ai Hoshino. In terms of importance, she is both figuratively and literally at the center of the episode, with every plot point and story beat revolving around her place in the narrative. She has a very clear and distinguished character arc, which is demonstrated and executed beautifully in this episode. The main conflict presented here is whether she can balance her professional career as a successful idol and her personal life of being a single mother caring for twins. The insight into the brutal and harsh conditions of the entertainment industry is conveyed through how it affects Ai's well-being, with the crux of her story being tied to one of the series' major themes: lies and how that can be construed as love. Despite her namesake, Ai has struggled all her life to understand the concept of love. Growing up in a children's home without a proper family unit has led her to believe that she wasn't capable of accepting and reciprocating the love she receives from her adoring fans, her managers, and even her own children. So she clings on to the idea of lying in the hopes of understanding what love truly means. This all culminates in the episode's heartbreaking twist at the end. Ai's stalker, with a bouquet of flowers in hand, manages to find her apartment and fatally stabs her in the abdomen. Only in her dying breaths does she drop the facade and is able to honestly express how she truly feels, reminiscing about how she spent her time as an idol, all of her insecurities laid bare in front of the stan who killed her. All of the themes and motifs that were presented in the episode are all called back to here, like her not remembering names or faces until Ai recalls a gift she received from her stalker and how she's always cherished it. The most critical point of this scene, however, is after spending her entire life living a lie, she spends her last moments embracing Aqua and Ruby and departs from this world, leaving them with those 3 simple words.
Ruby, Aqua, 愛してる.
God, I get chills every time I think about that scene. It's just well done, emotionally driven storytelling with satisfying narrative and thematic payoffs. The impact of this scene would have been greatly diminished had the premiere been adapted into standard-length episodes, not giving the proper time it really needed to tell her story. The episode leaves newcomers thinking, if this is what they can do in one episode, imagine what they can do with an entire series. And that's an awesome feeling to have. I'm sure you're familiar with fantasy anime and video games of the hero with a party of travelers by their side going on a quest to defeat the Demon King in order to save the world. The main appeal of these types of stories is the adventure at the heart of the series, but have you ever wondered what happens after they have achieved their goal? Well, that's what Frieren Beyond Journey's End attempts to shed some light on. After a 10-year adventure, the party consisting of Himmel the hero, Heiter the priest, Aizen the warrior, and Frieren the mage have vanquished the aforementioned Demon King. After celebrating and reminiscing on their journey together, each member goes their own separate ways. However, being an elf, time for Frieren moves at a slower rate than humans, and thus doesn't understand how precious time is to them. When the party reunites 50 years later, while Frieren hasn't changed one bit, her fellow members, on the other hand, have visibly aged and withered. It's only when Himmel dies and is attending his funeral that Frieren regrets not getting to know him better when he was still alive. This moment serves as the catalyst for Frieren to make an effort to get to know humans better going forward. Before I started watching the anime, I got the impressions from fans of the manga that Frieren was going to be this really depressing show about people around you dying one after another, and how that will leave you an emotional wreck after watching it. And yeah, I did get that to some extent, but I also felt that it was so much more than that. But why did this premiere make people so sad in the first place? Well, I believe it's because the series does a great job of establishing the bond between the hero party. Even though we, the audience, have just met these characters for the first time, you instantly buy the idea that these people have shared a 10-year adventure together because of how natural their interactions with each other are. So when each of them succumbs to the inevitability of death, it's even more of a gut punch because we know how that will emotionally affect the characters going forward. But while mortality is certainly a major theme in the series, cherishing and preserving their memories is just as important. This is illustrated through its callbacks and flashbacks, capturing the snapshots of the party's adventure and how that relates to the corresponding plot of the episode. These include Frieren finding a field of blue moon weed flowers after being told that it was the native flower of Himmel's hometown and how he would like to take Frieren to see them one day. Or it's Frieren appreciating and experiencing the sunrise at the New Year's festival after having previously dismissed it as pointless the last time she was there. These moments, whether they are grand and bombastic or quiet and understated, succeed in delivering its emotional highs really well, whilst also providing much needed character depth for Frieren. Speaking of Frieren, another reason why this premiere works so well is the personal journey she embarks on. While it's not as conclusive as Ai's character arc, as Frieren still has a lot more room to grow and develop, there is nonetheless a clear and satisfying character arc you can trace from beginning to end. Frieren is introduced as someone who fails to see the value of human connections and friendships. After having lived for over 1,000 years, embarking on a 10-year adventure didn't mean anything to her because of how minuscule she thought that moment of her life was to her in the grand scheme of things. However, as mentioned before, Himmel's death affected her in such a way that she now strives to make an effort in getting to know humans better. This is exemplified when she meets Fern, a young girl who Heiter adopted after being made an orphan in the throes of war. Once Heiter passes away, Frieren takes on Fern as an apprentice mage to accompany her on her new adventure. You learn to love this partnership over the course of the premiere because not only do we get to learn more about each of them as time goes on, but they also gain something from each other along the way. Fern continues to train and study about magic from Frieren, and in return, Frieren learns from her past errors in order to better connect with Fern. Their chemistry is also very entertaining to watch, as their student-teacher dynamic is kind of flipped on its head. The more time we spend with Frieren, the more we realize that she is not the astute, aloof, and slightly cold mage we initially believed, but is actually kind of incapable of taking care of herself. So it's up to the significantly younger Fern, who is the more mature and responsible of the two, to take care of her and to keep her from wandering aimlessly. But the pair's aimless travels does end up leading to something, as the premiere ends with Frieren and Fern finding the tome of Flam the legendary mage, who was also Frieren's former teacher, with the scripture inside describing the land of Oriel, a place where one can meet the souls of the dead. They realize that place is located in Ende, which is also where the Demon King's castle is, and it is expected to take just as long to get there as before. And thus, as a call to a new adventure arises, Frieren sets off on a familiar journey with a new outlook on life and a new goal of meeting Himmel again at Oriel to achieve. But alas, despite new opportunities emerging for our protagonist,
たった10年の冒険だよ。
what a wonderful way to cap off a beautiful premiere, setting up the viewers for an anime series that I bet will be for the ages. Which leads us on to... While the first episode is meant to establish the setting and characters, it is also important to create a through line for the episode to follow. This is achieved through its pacing and structure, and since we're dealing with a longer than standard runtime, the through line is then extended to reach that newly designated endpoint. I mentioned earlier in the video that there isn't usually a reason given as to why some anime have double-length episodes, let alone feature-length ones. However, in this behind-the-scenes video uploaded to the official Oshi no Ko YouTube channel, we do get some insight into why the production decided to make the first episode a full-blown feature film. The short version is that they were big fans of Aka Akasaka's manga, and instead of recounting the events of the first volume over multiple episodes, like a typical anime production would do, they were inclined to make it one long episode. As a result, Oshi no Ko's premiere functions more like an extended prologue for the story. It even declares itself as such before the credits roll. Even with the extended runtime, it flies through its source material very swiftly, and yet it still leaves room for the viewers to catch their breath and relish in its gorgeously directed ruminations of what it's like to be in an industry predicated on fabrication. However, while it does have that function, I also believe from what we've discussed earlier that it works just as well as a standalone piece of media. That being said, given that it centers heavily on one single aspect, that being the world of idols, when the show's not necessarily about idols, this can make it feel a bit disconnected from the rest of the series. Sure, some of the themes and motifs introduced in the first episode carry over into the rest of the series, but the shift in focus from the small family unit to a grander mystery that takes center stage is indicative of where the plot is inclined to go. I guess that's also another way the show lies to you, as stated in the beginning, so it's pretty on brand in that department, but it doesn't necessarily prime the viewers for what's to come for the rest of the series. Now, remember when I said earlier that Frieren's premiere isn't technically 2 hours long despite being reported as such? Well, it depends how you look at it. The broadcast schedule may list it as 2 hours, but if you take out all the ad breaks and any repeats of the OP and ED, then you're left with a runtime of around 94 minutes, which is still pretty long, all things considered. The other thing to mention is whether this could be considered a feature-length premiere at all, as streaming services and subsequent and subsequent rebroadcasts have split it across 4 standard length episodes. It's still fine to watch it this way, but I do highly recommend you check out the full 94-minute cut if you can, because it flows as one continuous episode, and I think it's better for it. Almost as if it was designed to be viewed that way in the first place. Plus, you'll be greeted by a special ED that's different from the regular ED, and it is just as beautiful. But if that is ultimately the case, why am I still insisting on calling it a feature-length premiere? Well, whether you watch it in parts or binge the whole thing in one sitting, because Frieren's structure is so solid throughout, you're still left satisfied after watching it. While the premiere mostly consists of episodic chunks, in line with Frieren's tendency to wander about in one location at a time, there is still a clear through line that connects these parts together to form a narrative and thematic whole. Time is a significant theme in Frieren, noted by how Frieren's perception of time differs from everyone else's, utilizing the montage sequence to convey the passing of time, whether that be a few months or a few years. Since the series has a strong emphasis on time, it feels appropriate to reflect that in its runtime, which incentivizes the premiere to spend as much time as it needs to effectively develop its key scenes. but it also knows when to be efficient and not to have certain scenes overstay its welcome. This is exemplified in Frieren's rematch with Qual, an enemy affiliated with the Demon King the hero party encountered on their journey. Qual and his killing magic known as Zoltrak were too powerful for them to handle at the time, so Frieren placed a temporary seal on him that will wear off after 80 years. However, during that period of being sealed, Zoltrak was rigorously analysed by mages across the land, and within a few short years became regular ordinary offensive magic, leading to Frieren having the upper hand and defeating Qual with relative ease. So while the scene may not be heavy on its action, it does showcase the anime's meticulously thought out world building, and how the people in that world deal with situations like these. All of these elements result in a premiere that flows naturally from one story beat to the next without it feeling too sluggish. To wrap this video up, I want to refer back to the question I asked earlier in the video, that being, is the length justified? As you could probably tell, I loved these premieres a lot, so not only do I think that the runtime for these episodes are justified, but I also can't imagine them being anything but feature length. Well, I technically can, but that's besides the point. While Oshi no Ko and Frieren Beyond Journey's End are very different series, both take similar approaches to their premiere. They take advantage of their extended runtime to expand upon their bold, almost subversive premises, explore their distinctive environments and excel at world building, and to better communicate their rich, complex themes and ideas to its audience. They embrace their respective source material wholeheartedly, which is great for the manga readers because they're getting a first-rate adaptation out of it, and it's also great for the newcomers because they're being introduced to a series that is this strong right out of the gate. Both premieres were met with heaps of acclaim from the anime community, both landing amongst the top 10 highest ranking anime on my anime list within their first week, with Oshi no Ko actually being the highest rated anime of all time for a while. I know there will be some people who will be put off from starting either series because of their premiere's colossal runtimes, and I completely understand if you feel that way. It's a big commitment, I'm not gonna lie. But for people like me who did end up giving it a chance, it was an absolute blast, and these episodes were enough of a reason to solidify themselves as contenders for Anime of the Year. So, now that we've seen what feature-length anime episodes are capable of, are we going to start seeing more anime adopting this format in the future? The truth is, I don't know the answer to that question. Sure, it can present new opportunities for the studios and the production staff when planning to adapt something into an anime, and it opens the door for them to make the shows that they want to make in the future. But with that being said, any production schedule with the intention of making something feature-length takes a lot of time, energy, and resources. And none of those come cheap. While the production committees over at Doga Kobo and Madhouse were able to make it work, and make it look amazing on top of that, that is just not going to be the case for every studio. So if we ever do get a premiere akin to Oshi no Ko or Frieren ever again, it probably won't be for a very long time. But whether this ends up being a future trend or is just an anomaly isolated to this year alone, I'm personally glad that these premieres exist at all. Because in a landscape where more and more anime are released and are vying for your attention each and every season, these two anime were able to take the anime community by storm and make one hell of a first impression. Thank you guys for watching, I've been IrishAnimeFan, and until next time, Slán.